All right, welcome to the webinar. Thanks for joining us, everyone. This is our webinar on DentalCAD 3.2 Elefsina feature release. My name is Lucas Chardulo. I'm an application support engineer. I work out of our Boston office, joined today by my colleague, Dan Elsinger. Hey, Dan.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining.
All right, so before we get started, the topic for this one is the bite splint workflow. Before we get into that workflow, we're going to talk about some general features and workflows that are included in the latest release. So usually these minor in-between releases are service releases, but there were enough new features and tools that we were able to put in this version that it earned the name feature release. So first we're going to go through some of that new stuff that's in here. So the first thing, increased automation in workflows, primarily single crown design. So in the settings panel in DentalCAD, in the design workflows section, where we have highlighted in red on that screenshot, there's a setting where you can toggle on use simplified crown design workflows, similar to chairside CAD. So if anybody's familiar with chairside CAD, there's a lot more automation and certain steps there. So it would do the crown bottom step, adapt your contacts and occlusal adaptations automatically. And then in conjunction with that, there's also another setting that you can turn on auto articulator. So you can have a highly automated, streamlined workflow to simplify your design process for those simple restorations. Improvements to model creator. So at the model alignment step, this is a user interface improvement. So where you're selecting the model type for your case, there's a lot of different options there, different model types. So there are 2D images, and it pops out to a larger image when you mouse over it. So maybe somebody, if you're new to the software, this will just help you learn the terminology for the different model types, and you get a nice image of exactly what type of model will get calculated based on your selection there. Another improvement for model creator, this one at the merge and save restoration step, so at the last step of your design, you'll see another button there called quick model design. So if you click that, it'll just automatically jump through the steps for model creator and design your model automatically based on some preset parameters. Improvement in bar design module. If anybody's familiar with the paint and pull tool in other crown and bridge workflows, we've brought that into the bar design workflow. Basically, there's a tool where you can mark a certain region, and that's the green area on our screenshot there. And you can switch to a pull moving parts tool, basically click and drag that area, and the blue area stays fixed. So kind of creative way of adjusting your surface of your design. So this is in bar module, in the freeform bar step, you'll find that there. Small creator, really popular module. So of course we have some improvements there as well. So we've done some improvements to the initial scan orientation and those secondary views. And you'll see some new buttons there to switch those camera views, toggle between the secondary views. In the 2D color bar, we've added some pinpoint crosshairs that stay on that color map area. So after you make color selections, you can easily adjust those. So there's one for base color, another one for highlight color, and they're pointing to an exact area on that color bar. And you can click and drag and move those around. Make it a little easier for your color selections there. And then for the Small Creator report, some additional options have been added for the customization. So there's a section there where you can choose what information, what parts, and what pages to include in your report for patient presentation. So there's some new options there. This is a good improvement for DentalShare. So if you're utilizing DentalShare for sending orders to maybe a production center, design center, something like that, in DentalDB settings in the DentalShare section, there's a toggle switch there that says create digital order slip. So if you turn this on, after you create an order and send it via DentalShare, click the DentalShare action button. You'll see additional fields there. After you select a recipient, you can add in your address and recipient address. And this will get appended to a PDF order slip that gets passed to the receiver in your order. So maybe you're sending it somewhere to get designed or produced, and that's going to get shipped not back to you, but to a third party. So now you can include that information right in DentalShare. Another user interface enhancement, this time with the articulator panel. So we have a lot of different articulators in the software. So what we've done is add some 2D preview images of all the different articulators at the top section there. So maybe if you're working with a lot of different articulators, and now you have a visual reference there to help you select which one you're working with. Just below those images, on the Choose Influencing Teeth button, there's a triple dot button there. When you click that, there's some checkboxes that you can use to select a different scan file to move with your model during the articulator simulation. And then towards the bottom of that panel, in the jaw selection area, you can now choose for any of these articulators whether the maxillary arch is going to be the one that moves on the screen or the mandibular arch is going to be. So previously, it was always the maxillary arch. So it was simulating the articulator sitting on the bench. The maxillary arch is the one on the hinge and moving. But now you can choose either one for any of those articulators, depending on your preference for how you want to see that. Enhancement on the in-skull articulator. This came out a little while ago, I think first in chairside CAD, but we have enhanced that in-skull articulator with a new visual effect, crystal skull effect. We'll take a look at that when we pull up a case later. This makes it a little more transparent and you can see the restorations through it better. So a nice looking visual enhancement there. And of course, we keep updating software to on the back end to be compatible with the latest Windows environment. So the current .NET version requirement is .NET 8. Framework file, if you're not familiar with the installation process, your reseller installs some Microsoft prerequisite files, and those are packaged together in an exocad framework file. So the version of that is currently 2024. So that gets installed prior to installing the DentalCAD build. And then required internet address access. There's a number of URLs, internet website addresses that need to be accessible for the software, a lot of the software functions to work. And then you can contact your reseller for more specifics about that if you have any questions on that topic. All right, DentalCAD Ultimate Bundle Trade Up. So we're running this promotion again until December 31st of this year. What this means is if you have a perpetual license that was activated before August 31st of this year, you can now switch to get the Ultimate Bundle for one-time fixed fee, regardless of how old your license might be. So of course, this gets you access to the latest versions, like the one that we're talking about today, and access to all of the modules that come with the Ultimate Bundle module. So you get all the goodies and all the toys in there. All upgrades, software updates through December 1st of next year. So new releases that come out, you get access to those. And we recently released a new denture tooth library called Inspira library, and you get access to that as well. So if you haven't been sure about updating, you're on the fence, this is a really awesome opportunity to get the best package of the software. So you can reach out to your reseller for more details on that. Shop.exocad. So if you go to the exocad website, there's a web shop link at the top. And if you visit there, you can browse and purchase either online training, or newly added to that is in-person training. In-person training currently is in the Mayer region at our headquarters in Darmstadt. So really awesome opportunity if you're in the area to visit the exocad headquarters and get some training there from our exocad experts that work in that area. Otherwise, for other areas of the world, you can browse online trainings there. Up to 25 people can participate in your training, so you can get a large group of colleagues together and partake in the training. A lot of different topics. So we're covering DentalCAD and exoplan topics there. The basics if you're just getting started with the software, release highlights, walkthroughs and how-tos on the different add-on modules, and also system checkups just to make sure that our software is running as good as it could be on your system. You also get certificates for these courses and access to recordings afterwards. So you have continued access to the content that you go over during the training. So check that out. Our YouTube channel. So these webinars that we're doing, there's a few different ones in several different languages. So once we're done running through these will be available on our YouTube channel. So keep an eye on that afterwards, and you'll be able to access these recordings afterwards. All right, so with that said, we're going to move into the bite splint workflows. If you have any questions on the bite splint topic, just go ahead and type those in, and Dan and I will try to get those answered during the session. All right, so let's close that. Pull up our DentalDB here. All right, so bite splints, we're going to go through a couple different workflows here. The first thing I want to show you is when you're just setting up a new order for bite splints, just click on a tooth here, click the bite splint work type button, pick a material, click OK. You get prompted with a new dialog here. So select appliance type. You can now design simultaneous upper and lower bite splints in the same workflow. So the software will automatically complete the rest of the order for you based on your selection here. So if you're doing single arch or upper and lower together, let's click single arch for example here. You jump back and the tooth chart has been set up for your order. So I selected the antagonist and marked your maxillary arch with the bite splint work type. All right, let's load a different case that we're going to go through. So this one we're going to go through upper and lower bite splint workflow. We'll click the design button here. So the first step of this, we're going to talk a bit about a cloud service function called tooth segmentation. So the first step of this, right away, it's automatically going to start the tooth segmentation step. So there's an AI button on the right side in our toolbar. That is enabled in CAD settings. So as long as we're connected to the internet, our scan data has been uploaded to exocad servers, and each individual tooth position is being calculated, and that information just sent back to us real quick. So fast process, and what we end up with is a nice tooth segmentation of individual tooth models that have been extracted from this model. What that's going to do for our splint workflows is a lot of the software. So once it knows the individual tooth positions, it's going to be able to automatically plot the border edges of the splint for us. So saving a little time there. And then you'll see in a different case, we can actually reuse that anatomy for some workflows as well. So each tooth is color coded, so we can easily identify it. Just to do a quick QC check here, just to make sure that it identified. Usually it's pretty accurate, but just do a quick check. Tooth numbers are correct. Each tooth structure is identified in a different color. That looks good, so we can keep chugging here. So now it's going to repeat that for the lower arch. So just automatically, I didn't click anything after the next button. So again, the scan file has been uploaded and each individual tooth data is coming back to us. There's some tools to correct areas that we're marking. So I'll show you that on the next case. Actually, it's pretty easy to correct if it selects something that is not part of that tooth structure. All right, so click next here. Next step is design bite splint bottom. So here we're setting an insertion path for the bite splint. So I'm just rotating the scan, looking perpendicular to the screen at how we want that insertion path to be set up. Then I come over to the wizard and click set insertion direction from view. And there's some parameters up here that adjust the fit of the bite splint. So the software is calculating a separate mesh here that's going to overlay our model scan or jaw scan. And that surface is going to be offset a certain amount, and it's going to block out undercuts here as well. So I'm going to click the apply button. We'll start calculating that. So this surface that we're going to see in a second will be the underside surface of the bite splint. So the surface that's contacting the tooth structure. So if I zoom in and look here, this blue surface isn't going down into those interproximal areas that are super tight. So there's some settings over here, mainly the smoothing setting, that's telling the software to kind of jump over those gaps. That makes it easier to seat this appliance, and if you're milling or printing, you don't end up those really sharp areas down interproximally. So that's the smoothing setting. If you move it to the right, you get even larger spaces there. You got to find the compromise there. So that also is making less surface contact with the tooth structure. So starting point is here. I recommend starting there. If you're milling the appliance, there's a spot for tool diameter there as well. And of course, the freeforming tab, if you need to manually add some blockouts, so you have access to the add and remove tools here, smooth and flatten, so you can manually add some material, block out different areas under your splints if you need to. All right, let's click the next button. Design bite splint bottom for the lower. Same steps here. We'll just set insertion direction real quick. Click set insertion direction, click apply, and we'll calculate that offset bottom surface. Bite splint bottom. All right, that looks good. We'll keep going. Virtual articulator, next step in the wizard. So now we've calculated the bite splint bottom surfaces. We have the minimum thickness surfaces that have been set up here. We can now run the articulator. So this is the new 2D images for the articulators that I mentioned earlier. So you can see that at the top here. So all different articulator models have an image up here now. What we're going to do here, we're just going to open the bite a little bit. So I zoom in here, you can actually see that 0, 4 notches up or 4 millimeters open at the pin. And the jaw selection area, also what we mentioned earlier. So you can see here we can toggle between moving the lower, the upper. And you also have buttons here on which jaw to adapt later on at the adapt step when you're adjusting the occlusal adaptation. You can also change this later on as well. There's the buttons here as well. So we have move lower checked off. We'll click on start articulator movement simulation. Happens really quick. So now we have the articulator data stored in the background that we can use later to adapt our designs. Click the OK button. Upper right corner, you have this panel available throughout the rest of the design, so it's easy to come back and visualize your articulator movements. And you can also toggle between the upper and lower here as well. Mathematically, the same information was calculated. It's just visual representation, which jaw you want to show moving on the screen there. All right, next step, design bite splint top. So this is happening automatically here. So since we have segmented the teeth, the software knows all the individual tooth positions and it plotted our margin lines here. So over in the wizard, there's some parameters that can control that behavior. So we have, if I expand this section here, we have an offset up or down parameter, meaning I can move the entire curve of points, either further away from the gingiva or closer to it. So if I move this to the right, click detect margin again, those points will jump down towards the occlusal surface of the teeth a little bit, so they're not, we have less surface contact of material there. Meanwhile, if you move that to the left, negative direction, your points will move closer to the gingiva, overlap the gingiva, depending on how far you go. The other setting here, 2-point threshold, it adjusts the spacing between your points, increases your resolution. Surface properties, scrolling down a little further here, you have, of course, your material thickness settings. So the splint was calculated at 1.5 millimeters. Occlusal thickness, 1 millimeter peripheral thickness, and then we have that smoothing setting. So similar to how smoothing affected the bottom side layer of the splint, the setting here affects the outer surface. So if you bump this setting further to the right, the outer shell of your splint will have less of this tooth cusp detail in it. So anytime you make adjustments to these parameters, just hit the apply button again. It will recalculate. And we have a little bit smoother, flatter surface there. The other tool of note here, there's a separate tab, posterior area. So I click this, it switches to a different tool here. Switch to occlusal view. You need to click a couple times on the splint. We're just marking a segmentation point of the posterior teeth. And then there's a parameter over here. Because we open the bite a little bit, the effect isn't going to be quite as dramatic. But what it does is, I can see it created quite a bit flatter surface on the posterior teeth. And of course, at the next step, freeform step, we can use a smoothing tool to further clean that up and refine that. Click next here. Now we're on the bite splint top for the lower arch. Let's make this a little thinner here. 1.2 millimeters. Click the apply button since we made a parameter change. Recalculate that surface. And we'll click next here. All right, so now on the screen we have two separate bite splints. There might be some overlap here depending on how open the bite is. I'm going to show you a tool later on. We have a new function here that can easily combine these two separate splints together as a single structure. So the freeforming step, depending on what your goal is here, maybe you're just using the smoothing tool to clean this up. So we bump the strength up, increase the cursor size, and a little trick here, hold down the shift key for the flatten tool, or super smooth as some people call it. So now you can blend in the surface really quickly. So whether you're flattening out the occlusal surface. Up here in the show hide list under bite splint parts, you have a separate item for the upper and lower splint, so you can turn one off. And the show distances tool is on by default here. So this is showing us our current mode up here. If I expand the show distances tool, show interference contacts. So anywhere we see the color map here is where our outer bite splint surface is overlapping the opposing, whether that's opposing dentition or in this case, our opposing splint material. So even if the other splint's not on, you can see the surface contact through the color map here. So in this case, since we're going to be combining these two together, I'm going to leave that overlap area. We'll turn visibility back on. We'll bring our upper back on here and maybe use the anatomic tools just to create a little more overlap in some areas. All right, that should be adequate. So in this freeform step, if you're familiar with other workflows in the software, generally you have access to attachments tab over in the freeform step. But just to a technical detail with how splints are designed, we have to go to the end to the merge and save step, merge that mesh of the splint, and then we can go back to freeform and have access to the attachments tab. So I'm going to jump ahead here to the next step. We're at merge and save. So right now we're still separate splints. What we're going to do is click on freeform merged restorations, click the next button. That's going to bring us back to the freeform step. And now we have access to the attachment tab here. So of course here you have access to a lot of different components that are included in the software for adding or doing subtractive parts and even bringing in your own files. So if you scroll to the bottom of that list, there's a load from file link, so you can import your own parts to add to your designs. In this case here, I'm going to show you a new tool that you can actually just take one of these splint surfaces, splint meshes, and use that as an attachment. So all I did was right click on the splint. It comes up in the context menu. And there's an option here that says use as attachment, teeth 2 to 15, bite splints. So if I click this, that upper bite splint is now an attachment, and I left click on the lower splint. You see the color changed slightly a little bit there, so that's an active attachment part. Click the apply button, and now these have been joined together. So we have a little notification in the upper right, attachment operation done. And just to verify that, I'll jump over to the free tab. Let's turn off our minimum thickness layers. And if I go to the merged parts list and turn off the lower jaw, I see we still have a separate upper bite splint. But if I turn off the upper and turn the lower back on, I see that the lower now contains both parts here. And let's turn on the cut view tool real quick. Do a scan across here so we can see we have nice surface overlap. We have a single watertight mesh of both of those splints now. Another tool that's new, look at the cut view window down here. There's now a screenshot button where you can grab a screenshot of your cut view window. So just click that, cut view screenshot was captured, and those are saved. You can access those in the screenshot image management tool. All right, let's close the cut view window. So what you can do here, we're now at the freeform step here. Let me turn off show distances. And since those are a single surface, I can use things like the smoothing tool, and you can see even a little better how those are combined to a single surface. So again, go through your splint design to the end, merge and save. Then you go back to the freeform merge step there to get access to your attachments tool, and then right click on your splint to get to that tool there. So when we click the next button, and it's going to re-save our case. Oh, it's recalculating the attachment since I went back to that tab. All right, so now we're saving our new STL files, overwriting the originals. And this time we'll click on done and next, we'll save our scene file. So when we go back to DentalDB, I'm just going to show you dentalshare real quick. Sometimes an overlooked topic. So anytime you set up a case, import scans, or complete a design, you have access to dentalshare to send that case. So I click the dentalshare link here. We've completed a design, so maybe we're going to send it for production somewhere. Click on the receive. Let's click a test recipient here. Over on the right side, it's going to show you what files are being sent, and then you click the OK button, and your case is on its way. So in the background, your project data gets uploaded, and then you can see a status indicator down in the lower left corner of what's happening with that case. And then you can click the details button and get some information in the middle. So these are the files that we sent. And there's also a chat tool here. So this message bar down here, so the receiver of the case, maybe you put in an instruction, please design and follow pre-op scan. The receiver didn't receive the pre-op scan, they can send you a message back, hey, please send pre-op scan, and then you can add that as an attachment. So really good communication tool built in there as well. All right, let's continue bite splint workflow. Now we're going to show you anatomic bite splint, maybe a little bit lesser known workflow for splints here. I'll just show you how this case is set up here. We have, again, bite splint work type selected, 3D printing for the process. Over on the right side over here, where it says bite splint mode, 3 different buttons. So that the previous case we just went through, that was set up as standard bite splint. So that's offset shell of material over your teeth. If you have an edentulous area, instead of having the splint material just drop down against the tissue and then back up on the adjacent tooth on the other side, you have this option here that says fill gap for missing tooth. So you can click this option. It's going to load a library tooth in the edentulous area, and then kind of act as a bridge for your splint material to go over, a placeholder for tooth position. And then the last option, anatomic, use anatomy from tooth library. That's the option that we're going to go through on this case. So we're going to have offset shell of material, but then on top of that, we're going to append library teeth to create an anatomic splint, maybe used for opening the bite, different use cases there. All right, so this case, single arch this time. Click the design button. And again, launch our case. So we're going to use tooth segmentation again on this example. Load our scan data. This time, we're going to make use of an option that allows us to use the segmented teeth here as our restorative library tooth models a little later on. So let's let that calculation finish. There's this checkbox over here in the wizard, use also as restorative models. If I check this, instead of loading our traditional library teeth later on, it's going to utilize these tooth models that have been segmented from our scan. As I mentioned before, there's some tools to correct the auto segmentation pretty tricky to scan this area back here, so there wasn't a clear definition of tooth to gingiva there. So to correct it, you just come over to the wizard, click on the tooth you want to make an adjustment for. It changes to that yellow mask area, and I can adjust the brush size here. I'll make it a little smaller. I'm going to hold down the shift key for subtract, and we're just going to unmark a little bit of this area back here. And that's it. So I just made a correction and just click the apply button, and now our tooth model is updated. And I'll just repeat that again for the other side. So again, you just click on the tooth chart. We'll click tooth 31. It's going to show us the mask for that region. Hold down the shift key for subtract mode and clear the mask out a little bit here. All right, that looks good. Click the apply button. The tooth model's updated. So we have a nice looking tooth segmentation here for the rest of the arch. We've checked off our checkbox for use as restorative models. So we're good here. We'll click next. Next step, virtual articulator. We'll click start virtual articulator now. Open up our tool panel for the articulator. Let's take a look at the in-skull articulator. You can see a new visual effect. It's kind of a little translucent, pearlescent effect, pretty neat looking. So we can see our scans and segmented tooth models, everything mounted here. We're going to open the bite a little bit here. Open it 3 millimeters. The in-skull articulator by default is set up to move the lower arch, but again, you can adjust that if you need to. Actually, for in-skull, upper is locked out. Yeah, so this was an articulator created specifically for moving the mandibular arch. All right, so we'll run our simulation. Click the OK button and keep going here. Design by splint bottom, same step we saw before. We'll just make a slight adjustment to the insertion direction. Click set insertion direction from view and apply and create that blue by splint bottom surface. Click the next button. So now at the tooth placement step, a couple of messages I want to point out in the upper right corner here. So the notification icon, click this so I can get back to any of the messages that popped up. There's a couple of limitations just to be aware of here. So tooth library switch, if I look in the wizard panel, this is grayed out. So it's not going to let us switch between the segmented tooth models back to one of the standard tooth libraries. And then the other one, instant anatomic morphing. So this is, you'll notice the advanced tab is grayed out and not selectable there. That just has to do with the metadata behind the scenes for tooth libraries. So those tools don't work with the segmented teeth. So a little bit of trade-off there, but you do have access to chain mode. I'll show you that in a second. So your simple tab, of course, these are all your filters for scaling, rotation, movement. You can click move all simultaneously. So I can move this whole setup up into occlusion, or I can click over on the chain mode tab. Chain mode is a really awesome tool for these full arch setups. So again, you can use that to have more fine-tuned adjustments over the placement of our tooth arch here. Then with chain mode, with these control points, I'm going to lock the canines in place, and then I can kind of focus on the posteriors here. Control key for rotation, shift key for scaling. So we have full control over tooth position, size, and scaling at this point. All right, so let's consider we have our teeth in a decent position here. It's kind of reestablishing occlusion with our open bite. Click the next button. Now at the freeforming step, I'm just going to do a little bit of adjustment on our cuspids here. And then I'm going to show you something new with the articulator. Do a minor adjustment here. We'll say that we have our cuspid position where we want it. So notice the articulator panel in the upper right corner. If I go to the free tab, click the adapt button, this box expands a little bit. Only when you click on the adapt button, you can expand this and you have access to choose influencing teeth for the articulator, and you can rerun the articulator simulation without having to open the full articulator panel again. So what we can do, I can click on choose influencing teeth. What this is going to do, let me turn off the opposing scan here, zoom in. The teeth are kind of grayed out, so that's telling the software that these teeth are to be ignored in the articulator simulation. If I want to have canine guided movement here, click on mark teeth by click. I'm going to click on complete, and then I'm going to hold down the shift key to unselect those two teeth. So now those will be considered as solid objects when the articulator simulation's running. So that's all we have to do there. So now I can click the OK button and come over here in the upper right corner, restart articulator movement simulation. And that's just going to redo the articulator calculation with that new variable in place that we selected with the choose influencing teeth. So now if we look at the color map, we have a little bit of light blue. That's just right where we're at 0 contact with the opposing. And then the color map has been adjusted on my other teeth based on that new movement. So if I come over to dynamic occlusion in the wizard, click the little down arrow, there's an exclude selected parts button there. These teeth should be safe, but just to make sure, I was going to paint on this area just so these teeth don't get modified at all when I do the occlusal adjustment, because these are my reference points, right, for the articulator simulation. So now I can click on dynamic occlusion. We'll make it slightly out of occlusion here. And now the color map has been adjusted on the other teeth. So now we are out of occlusion, 120 microns or so. We can verify that. Maybe switch to show contact areas. So now our 0 points at the teal color, 1/10 of a millimeter, right where we're starting to get the dark blue color. I think that's it for freeforming. So very good here. So next step, design bite splint top. So again, kind of like what we did on the other case, we need to design offset splint surface material, the shell. Only in this scenario, we don't need it quite as thick. So I'm going to go over to surface properties and bump that material thickness down to close to 1/2 millimeter or so. Because we don't want this surface of the splint to extend up over the anatomy of the teeth that we're trying to incorporate it, and that'll kind of defeat the purpose. So we'll create a thin shell here. Click the apply button. And once that surface gets calculated, there we go. You can see that kind of underneath that blue color. So now our tooth anatomy is all exposed. We're not covering that up. So now we can click the next button. Freeform splint top. So here, if you want to make any adjustments to that splint surface that was calculated before, just one tip I'll point out here. So if you see a spot that's maybe extending too far, you can actually adjust. Since it hasn't been adapted to the scan yet, it's still just filled in there. You can uncheck keep bottom boundary fixed, and then with your subtract tool, you can actually bump that material up or add additional material if you need to make that cover more tooth surface in the spot. So unchecking that will allow you to make those adjustments at the margin area. Otherwise, you can clean this up. I use a smoothing tool, as we showed before. Clean the surface up a little bit. That's really it. So the next step here, merge and save. This calculation takes a little while to get through. A lot going on here. So it's removing the splint material surface from the scan, and it's trimming all those individual tooth models to our design. Well, that's waiting. Let's check in with Dan, see what we're doing on the question side. If you have anything that
Yeah, so we've had
this.
some questions pop through.
Okay.
One of the questions was if this software version's available currently, and it is. You'll just need to contact your reseller to request that to have your installation upgraded. So that was one of them. We had some questions about the paint and pull feature, about the bar profile, which I answered that. But other than
Cool.
that, and then bite splint attachments, there was some questions revolving those. And I was just mentioning in the chat that you can add attachments once your design is reached merge and save. You can go to freeform merged and realize I had my camera turned off, so I not hiding from you all. Don't worry. But anyways, within freeform merge, you can select a multitude of attachments, including bar profiles. There's a attachment along spline. So the question was really
Yeah, I can
regarding.
show that. I just happen to be at that step here. This one finished calculating. So if I click on freeform restorations, hit next, uh, attachment tab, and then you have access to all that stuff here. Subtractive attachments. Yep. So just a little caveat of the bite splint workflow, the attachment tab a little bit hidden just due to the fact that we have to do the merge and save operation before you can add stuff on a splint. So it is there, just a little hidden.
And then there was some questions regarding flat planes with the bite splint. I would say that flat and posterior option, if you want to create like a perfectly flat plane and you need to open your bite, sometimes that feature does reference the virtual articulator. So if you're sometimes I like to actually bypass the virtual articulator in the beginning of the workflow, and then you use your flatten posterior option, get your perfectly flat plane, and then you can open your bite after the fact via expert mode, and then you can go to tools and select the articulator option.
Yeah, that's a good point. So just because it shows the articulator in the wizard at that point, you can certainly click the next button, skip it, design the splint to ideal material thickness and shape, and then exactly what Dan said, run the articulator later.
And another method with the attachment in the library dropdown, there's attachment along spline, and you can essentially just left click points on the occlusal surface and then use a bar profile. So at that point, you could pick, a generic profile that has, like the primary bar right there, for instance, Lucas, and that'll give you a flat plane to where you could left click points on occlusal or any surface and then use the bar profile slide bars to adjust the size and shape. Yeah. So you can, but it's a series of left clicks to adjust those points. And at that point, if you're wanting to put the flat plane directly on the occlusal, you could just go to the occlusal surface and place the points on that. So that's another option. I would say that's kind of outside of the, already available tool to select those posterior areas. But from there,
advanced tip here. Yeah, there you go.
Right. So you can kind of play with how it's presented to, whether you want it to go off the view or the surface or the top direction. And then also, all those profiles will allow you to really fine tune the width and height. So that's one method that I've seen useful. And then, from there, I would try that out. That's something I found kind of helpful in certain cases, but the flatten tool in the wizard workflow, like I said, if you utilize that, opening your bites after the fact of generating your flat plane, you'll probably get
Yeah.
more controlled results. So
Yeah, that's a good tip. Yeah. Cool. All right. I want to thank everyone for joining. We have a few minutes left, so if anybody does have any questions related to splints, just jot those in real quick. We'll keep it open for another minute or two here. But otherwise, I would like to thank you for taking some time to learn about exocad. Anything else coming in, Dan?
we do have one about, looks like one just came in. And this kind of came in with creating a splint over a splint. So for like dual layered splints, where I'm assuming like a softer material and
Oh, the
for
material.
the intaglio,
Mhm.
and then
Yeah.
harder material for the occlusal. I know this. We've seen a couple feature requests revolving this. There currently isn't a dedicated workflow for that. So I,
No, not yet. Um, I suppose you'd have to do a workflow where maybe you save your jaw scan with the first layer,
Yeah, and
depending too.
that's what I kind of put in the chat.
Explain
And
it. Okay.
yeah, and with what Lucas was saying, it's you could design the inner layer potentially first, and maybe turn down the smoothing all the way to get more of an intimate shape, thin shell, or whatever parameters you see fit, and then export that with the jaw scan and as an STL file, and then use that in a new project as
Mhm.
as the jaw scan, and then design a bite splint over it. Can't I would just say that would probably be a workflow you'd have to test on your own to see if you get the results you're looking for. But at this point, we don't offer a dedicated streamline like wizard workflow for it.
Yeah. A lot of requests for it though, so hopefully soon we'll have something for that.
And I had a few questions regarding the recording. So this this is being recorded. It will be available in the future on our YouTube channel, and so we'll have to give our team a little time to get the videos processed and have them uploaded.
Yeah, they'll be up soon. Yeah. All right, sounds good. I'm pretty close to the hour, so I guess we'll wrap it up. Again, thanks everyone for joining, and enjoy your exocad software. All right, take care, everyone. See
Thanks,
ya.
everyone.